Good evening, everyone. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives, and tonight it's Thursday night, TNT night, a Thursday night trio with George Webb and Professor Darrell Hamamoto. Good evening, gentlemen, and wow, lots of stuff to talk about tonight. George, you've been on fire, and I saw a little bit of your show today, Professor Hamamoto, about the great Johnny Carson.
Thank you.
Very, very interesting to think about who these people really are, the ones that we've seen on TV so many times. But anyway, you know, I'm going to start off tonight just because this is really on my mind. The president, the CDC, and our governor here in Maryland have all sung the same song today, which is that you have to make a choice now. You can either get the vaccine or you can wear a mask. And that's going to be the case until here in Maryland, until 70% of the population of Maryland has had the vaccination, the complete vaccination. And I find that to be very terrifying in terms of what it means for civil liberties and for freedom in the future. Because it's like if you are one of the people that chooses to be, you know, in the control group, that is, we're not going to submit ourselves to the we're not going to be guinea pigs for these trials. That we're now going to be shamed by having to wear masks. And that mask is a symbol of our, you know, lower status, of our being unable to participate in the full civil liberties and culture and society, like people that did, you know, accept the jab, as we're calling it now. So I think it's a day to think about. Is this the tilting point? Is this the turning point right here? I heard, George, you mentioned the Alex Jones presentation that was going around on Twitter, and I'm not a big Alex Jones fan, but I thought he made a pretty good case that this is the big push for the Great Reset, using the COVID as a kind of a shoehorn to get the Great Reset going. And so are we right now at a time where a lot of people, you know, Paul Cottrell, others are saying, hey, let's make the big push now. Let's talk about this, because now, you know, maybe Fauci's on the ropes. Maybe the lab thing is going to hit the big time, and the newspapers are not going to be able to you know, ignore it any longer. So that's my context for tonight. Are we right now? Is this the tipping point?
Well, from my point of view, I did hear a little bit of Alex Jones's talk, and he played a lot of Tucker Carlson talking about the gain of function stuff and his piece. But then he also said, you know, there are experts who can see something that's man-made, like a spaceship or a skyscraper, and they can tell that that's not a normal thing. I mean, it's not the Grand Canyon. Two different signatures, and this one certainly has the signature of Apollo, you know, Saturn V rocket. And you know, I do think that this Saturn V was launched against the people of the world. I don't think it's natural that some civet, you know, was able to spread this all over the world. And right now, the Great Splashdown, or the Great Reset, is the splashdown. It's the end of the launch, and it's where they want to be. They want to say, okay, now robots, transhumanism, blah blah blah. And all I say is, if you saw Wernher von Braun go out, you know, into the Potomac and watch the splashdown, you'd have to guess that he was also the guy that launched it. This is why I say the people who launched Event 201 to start this whole fear and panic were two guys. One, World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and the other guy was Bill Gates, the person who has the most to gain. So I think we got to put the spaceship and the people, you know, watching it splash down with the Great Reset. You got to connect that back to when they pressed the launch button, which was October 19th, 2019.
Professor, is this the tipping point?
Yes. So far as Bill Gates is concerned, we left off last week's conversation with an allusion to the divorce, the bill of divorcement between Bill Gates and Melinda Gates. And while I'm not celebrating prematurely, this was the fissure, this was the crack that I was hoping for, the crack between the male and the female. Remember, I'm all about, rather than encountering these people, I mean, they're the force that they have arrayed behind them is insurmountable. So I'm about looking at attacking them from the metaphysical standpoint. And once you have divided the male and the female element from each other, in fact, they're in conflict. That's our opportunity, right? The legal juridical remedies that people are talking about, because I know that there's talk of the Nuremberg trial, even though I did a talk on it last week, Nuremberg 2 and all the other types of remedies. While that is laudable, I believe that this is only going to be resolved once we clear it out from the metaphysical level. And I think the fact that Melinda Gates is throwing her former husband under the bus because of whatever misdeeds that he's accused of, and there's any number of scenarios that are out there that I won't speak of right now. I think it bodes well for us, and I think this returning to the scene of the crime, so to speak, that George alludes to, is it's a mea culpa. Really, it's an admission of guilt, and I think these individuals are going to be coming to the negotiation table now, so that their responsibility will be mitigated by the fact that they are I believe, in a process of repentance. And that's what it's really going to take for us to get out of this situation.
I like it. I like the metaphysical analysis that you always provide to us, Professor. And the male-female divide is one of the targets of this deep state, as far as I can see. Is that may be where the battleground really is. Is our future going to be a monosexual or asexual, or a bunch of walking Baphomets, if you can imagine anything less appealing?
That's quite an image. But
I'm sorry for that, but
no, it's okay. It's all right, John.
It's John, and we can get away with it. But my goodness, I mean, this is H.G. Wells. This is the time machine. This is the sexual procreation is no longer necessary. If we need any more kids, we'll go to the lab and get some. God. It's crazy, and that's where this is headed. It's headed to test tube babies. They don't like families. I really think that a great summary was made. Actually, it was somebody on Alex Jones's channel. Not that I watch it very much, but he said that if you put together the subversion program of the Soviets, and it really comes down to three things: patriotism, religion, and family. And they attack your love of your country, they attack your love of your religion, they attack your family, and they get rid of all of those things. Those are the three pillars that bind us into our culture. And if they undermine those, then they can turn us back into the lovely little serfs that they all really want in the first place. How do we combat that other than what we're doing? We're talking about it. I mean, you guys are working very hard to combat it, and hopefully the word's getting out. I'm very hopeful in the sense that, I know, George, you've been in contact with the Twitter blogger Billy Bostic's son and the Drastic organization, and those folks are amazing. I mean, the science that they do is incredible. So and like I've said many times, there's a whole lot more of us than there are of them. So at some point, we're going to start, but right now, I think it's a tipping point. I think if we succumb to this rule that says if you don't have a vaccination, then you have to wear a mask, then we're creating a division among our citizens that can only lead to discord.
Yeah, the Billy Bosticson interchange. If people don't know him, he's kind of the monkey symbol on Twitter. He's got this group of 30 or 40 folks that are sort of like our group, research group. I guess we would be not quite so drastic. He's more drastic, but you know, the last interchange we had was he was saying, "Hey, you know, George Webb's got a lot of publicity with this whole thing, the military games, the NATO Wuhan military games, that start the same day that Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates launched their rocket ship of, hey, pandemic's going to hit the world. I wonder how they knew that to the day. But he's saying, well, how about this bridge tournament? You know, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett love to play bridge. That happened about 3 weeks before in Wuhan, where all these intelligent officers came into Wuhan 3 or 4 weeks before. And, you know, there was a breakout in Italy. There was a breakout in September before. So maybe with the Italian intelligence officers. You know, I'm open to it. I'm not going to run out and smear Billy Bosticson because he didn't agree with what I said. I'm open to it. I went and ran the Dutch intelligence officers. I've got their names and I got their pictures. I put it out there. I saw their history of military service. I did the same thing for the Italian guys. I didn't see anything, but I like that out of the box thinking of, hey, wouldn't you send in the intel officers first to case the joint? And then they have the perfect cover, you know, they're there to play bridge. I said that I wouldn't test a bioweapon against bridge players, though. I would test them against the world's best athletes. And you're not going to create a super spreader event with 50 guys playing bridge and women playing bridge. That may be where the skin-to-skin contact started. But if you want to do the super spread, you have to do the big stadium. You got to do the 300,000 people. So, but anyway, that's just one of the interchanges we've had. That's a nice collegial interchange. It doesn't have to be 10 monkeys and one banana where we all hate each other. We can cooperate. And I think, you know, hopefully we'll keep putting one or two of these pieces together every day and kind of build this puzzle out, this mosaic.
Yeah, I read it. And well, of course, I don't read all of the science stuff. I can't understand it, but I read the little comment thread there, and I don't think that he was in any way saying that you're wrong about the Wuhan games. All he was saying was, hey, here's another idea. You know, has anybody checked? You know, there's international travelers coming in, whatever, 3 weeks earlier than the Wuhan games. Did they get sick? You know, that's just a good, honest question. I think it's a reasonable question to raise. And so, no, I don't think there's any, I saw no sense of conflict, and I thought it was really a very cooperative exchange. And that's where we have to do. I've been struggling with my studies from my book on my dad, you know, and I've been reading a fairly new book by a man named Tim Weiner, who I guess is somewhat famous for writing Legacy of Ashes about the CIA. And he wrote a subsequent book called Enemy about the FBI, or Enemies, I guess it's called. And, you know, it's another one of those sensations where I feel like, wow, I've got all this incredible, this is new information, you know, about Hoover and lots of drops and stuff. I'm excited about it. But at the same time, you can tell he's covering up too. He's also like, you don't get to look behind that door, you know. We're gonna go with the single bullet theory in this book, guys. So don't even think about it, you know. But other than that, it's another experience of what I guess it's kind of like a limited hangout. And what we have to do is we have to use whatever we have, whatever tools we have, whether it's a book by Annie Jacobson or some other famous author, or whether it's somebody's new idea on Twitter that says, hey, have you thought of this yet? And whatever it is, we have to focus on seeking the facts, and we have to keep our focus on the truth, and take what you need and leave the rest behind, and don't get involved in personal stuff, because we're never going to agree 100%.
Mm-hmm. John, speaking of limited hangouts, and by the way, I think Tim Weiner comes out of the New York Times.
Mhm.
The first book that I came across of his it's a good one. It's called Black Budget, which
Mm.
everybody knows about right now. The Pentagon keeps multiple sets of books in NATO and all that. But he's from the NYT. But so far as limited hangouts are concerned, I made a connection over the past couple of years. I started reading him in about 2018, shortly after he died supposedly of suicide. This is Anthony Bourdain. But so far as limited hangouts concerned, it's not just the people of letters, George, but now I'm seeing that in the world of haute cuisine or everyman cuisine, from Julia Roberts to Martin Yan, but our very own Anthony Bourdain. I broke it down on the previous Tuesday's Professor Hamamoto YouTube channel that Anthony Bourdain was most likely a CIA asset. Think of it, George, going from all these godforsaken parts of the world, unmolested, places like the Congo, Myanmar. How many thumb drives do you think he could secrete to these places to and fro, or pieces of yeast or flavorings or whatever it might be? In addition to that, he's a graduate of the CIA, not the Central Intelligence Agency, but the Culinary Institute of America. And the White Shoe Boys love their cryptonyms, don't they? And guess what year the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America, was founded? 1946. Yes, sirree, Anthony Bourdain. You've been caught out.
Yeah, I think I want to definitely retract anything I said about. I think maybe he was just a beer buddy of Obama's. And meeting in Indonesia. I do know that there was a favorite house near where Obama grew up, but it wasn't that little house. It was the nice big one that it had a river running through it, actually. Not a river, but a nice creek. So I do think that there was a history with those kids in Indonesia. And I do think Obama's mother was a big part of rewriting a pipeline down there. I do think the Seth Riches of the world inherit these lines that are drawn on maps for an operation whenever we have a favorable minister of interior to go, pump it dry, pump the Vogelkop dry. So in that sense, it's kind of comforting because it's the same story every decade in and decade out. And then the only thing that really changes is the veneer of the CNN veneer of what the cover story is today. But at the end of the day, it's all about oil, and all these character actors in these school plays are all about oil and gas and uranium, but mainly those main critical resources,
Now, was there a connection between, you mentioned this last time, but is there a demonstrable connection between Anthony Bourdain and Seth Rich?
Only hearsay, but I do believe that those guys were fast friends over there, and we'll see. Well, maybe when Obama really does write his book, he got his 50 million, but maybe he will write his real autobiography one day. I do think he knew Anthony Bourdain quite well, and he liked going to Indonesia. He speaks the language very well, and he felt very much like he was engaging his childhood. And when you think about it, I mean, there's a lot of detractors of Obama, but he went an awful long way from humble beginnings. Now, it helps to have a CIA mom who's drawing lines for pipelines, but having said that, I think at some point along the way he crossed paths with Henry Kissinger, and the arc that they had set for him, which was to be maybe the president or an interior minister of Indonesia or Kenya, got redrawn by Henry Kissinger to go all the way to the top.
So he was part of this kindergarten model that we've spoken out many times before. Groomed. These people are groomed from a young age.
Yeah, I would agree. So these things can be bandied around. They're interesting to talk about. I guess, Obama's kind of irrelevant now. But I do think the whole idea of compromise is not gone. I look at our poor president right now. He's just completely shattered man, completely compromised man. Everybody knows it, even his own family, is everyone around him. So it's hard to watch him actually try to play the role. Oh, there you go. Well, there you go. Okay, so we do.
Yeah, they met up in Jakarta, I think.
Okay, yeah, there you go. I mean, I don't think that's just one-time shot, to be honest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But where Anthony Bourdain seemed to have run afoul of the establishment when he very publicly denounced both Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and this was prior to Hillary Clinton putting herself up for the candidacy for election, the one where she was supposed to defeat Donald Trump. And I don't think now I'm not saying there's a cause and effect relationship there, but he was not a friend of that particular contingent of the power elite. In addition to the fact that, as most of us know, have heard or read about, he had some inside information about the goings on behind the scenes, the unseemly aspects of the power elite ritual get-togethers.
Yeah, and if you think about, I mean, there was, before the Hillary emails, which we have those. That's the DNC emails is kind of like a foundation. There was also Bush emails, and the Bushes destroyed just as many emails as the Clintons did. And the reason why I chose to focus on the Clinton emails is because they existed. I would have loved to have gone after the Bush emails, and from a Bernie point of view, that was all that we had. And so, people say, why the BlackBerries? Because that's what sent those messages. Why Imran? Because he was the one who configured the BlackBerries. Why the Anthony Weiner and his laptop? Because that's the server. Why all the other people that in the Clinton Foundation that Doug Band was sending the messages to? Because those are the contacts. So it's just a very logical way of proceeding. I didn't start with saying, I know about Dmitry Alperovich and BlackBerry, so I'm going to make a story about that. You know what I mean? We had this foundation of DNC emails, but my point is, there's the Bushes, I believe, had this on the Clintons. The reason why they dripped them out was to show, hey, we're still the boss here. And they dripped just enough out to say we could eliminate you at any time. Imran Awan would say this all the time. I could change the president out right now if I wanted to with Obama, because he had the access to the emails. So the emails, I think, are going to tell the story of weapons, like John's saying, a legacy of ashes type things, where you're using chemical weapons, you're using biological weapons, things that you shouldn't be doing. And we know it's against the law, and we see you doing it, and so that's why that's why I think they're all compromised. It's sort of like Andy Craig says, presidential puppetry. They have the compromise on them. It's really the Klaus Schwabs of the world and Henry Kissinger's of the world that compromised them both. Maybe not Bush because he was so powerful, but everybody else: Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, all the way through.
Now, so far as chemical and biological warfare that you've been following, George, in your reportage, there is a connection between Colonel Ishii's Unit 731 and Anthony Bourdain through a sort of a circuitous route here that I'll explain as quickly as I can. But 731 was also responsible for developing monosodium glutamate in order to feed the Japanese troops and sort of their debased sea ration type of equivalent. And later on, right after the war, when Japan was trying to recover from the aerial bombings from General Hap Arnold and were on the verge of starvation, there was an individual by the name of Momofuku Ando who developed what we know today as instant ramen, instant noodles. And he used that chemical that came out of 731 to spice and preserve these noodles. And later on, Anthony Bourdain's good buddy, David Chang, who's Korean American, named his flagship restaurant. Most people don't know this. What did he name it? He named it in homage to this Ando Momofuku, the father of instant ramen. There he is, right? He lived a very long, for a very long time. I think he was like 2007 he died. He must not have ate any sort of cup of noodle or something. But anyway, just to show you the continuity and the type of cryptogrammic mind games that these people like to play on us using CIA in a double entendre, right? David Chang, who is Anthony Bourdain's good buddy, his flagship restaurant is named none other than what? Momofuku Ko. That means child of Momofuku. And so all these big rollers, and they're all being ID'd, by the way, on facial recognition technology. They say it's just so that they can detect who the reviewers are, even if they're wearing disguises. But it's really a rollout of the very sophisticated facial recognition technology. But Momofuku Ko is sort of a slap. It's a joke on them. This is the child of instant ramen, and you're paying $500 a pop for it.
That's how much it costs? Wow.
I wouldn't know, George. I'd have to go to the back door and get the leftovers, if that.
I thought ramen was what college students
No.
had.
Momofuku Ko is a 12-seat restaurant. It's one of those places that you can't get a reservation unless you're connected.
Okay.
Yeah, that's his flagship restaurant even today, I think. He's got some offshoots. But instant, and there you go. You have that really super, super elite. And then you get your college student diet, right? Cup ramen, 99 cents. So that's the big joke on the public that they like to play.
Well, the whole idea of a camera crew, a CNN camera crew, being a cover, we saw a guy named Scott Clotworthy with his hand in the Unha-3 rocket, and that's Kim Jong-il's, the rogue state of North Korea's third rocket. His first two rockets exploded. One went a little ways and exploded, and one went a little farther but did get into orbit and exploded. So you have to be really confident to have an American named Clotworthy to have his hand in your third try. But yeah, but maybe that one guy was making an adjustment with, keying in the right codes to allow it to go into orbit because it was successful. But that was also a CNN news crew. And if you may not remember this, but Paul Manafort pretended to be a CNN newsman he did an interview of the guy who they got rid of in the Northern Alliance. Another crew came in like a day later and the camera blew up. Suicide, and then put the CIA's guy into the Northern Alliance who was going to do what, the CIA wanted him to do. So using CIA as a cover, I don't know what Donnie O'Sullivan, I don't know what his role is.
Well, we know about the anthropologists. We know about the writers. We know about the reporters, so-called the journalists who are doing double duty, right? But Anthony Bourdain, it says, well, all those have been played out. Why not celebrity chef? And that's where it rests today. And I think that might have had something to do with his death, which is suspected to have been the same type of death suffered by David Carradine. And Kate Spade also. It's not just a male deal here. She was 55 years old, supposedly strangled by her own designer scarf, a red one. And as we found out through understanding Leslie Wexner, right, with his chain of retail stores. Retail is very much involved, especially high level as well as mass market. Retail is inextricably linked to the so-called deep state. It's just as you found that transportation, Hertz, the rent-a-cars, it seems like almost everything's wrapped up. So there you go. Well, network, CNN, absolutely.
I'll let John get in here. I'm sorry, John.
John, please.
Well, on your subject there, the Culinary Institute of America, it caught my eye a couple of years ago, and it was founded in New Haven, Connecticut, the home of another famous institution called Yale, home of Skull and Bones. So it was the New Haven Culinary Institute, and then they just decided to make it the Culinary Institute of America. And yeah, I definitely think that's one of their cover things. And who knows what Mr. Bourdain was doing? Rest in peace, Anthony Bourdain.
Right.
That's one of the CNN shows I actually liked. It was not political. It was, taking you to all these, backwaters. I was learning geography, and I thought he did a pretty good job. And I thought he played it down the middle politically. But I do think he did speak out about Hillary Clinton. And I don't know if Obama was using him as a foil because, just Obama couldn't say it. But there was a couple of other people. Ted Kennedy backed Obama instead of Hillary, and there was other people that there seemed to be reprisals. And if you go back all the way to the Vince Foster stuff, it wasn't Bill Clinton that had the enemies list. It was Hillary that had the enemies list with all the reprisals. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's a part of our history, and you just wonder how many more days for Biden before Kamala Harris is president and Hillary is in the West Wing, and Kamala shining her shoes. How many days? It can't be long now.
Mm.
Well,
and when that does happen, the backstory will be already there. That's why this work's important.
I'm sorry, I stepped on that, Professor. Say it again, please.
Oh, I said, well, if that happens, as George just described, the scenario happens, the backstory has already been written. It's already out there. So their credibility coming in will not be as strong as if there had been nobody on guard doing this reportage here that George is doing.
Susan Hill has been called the real president now. Is that who I'm talking about, George? The one that's associated with the British intelligence?
I'm not familiar with her.
Okay, I got the name wrong then. Okay. Gosh, who is it that they're saying is
Susan Rice?
I think you mean Fiona Hill.
Oh, Fiona Hill.
Oh, not Fiona Hill. No, it wasn't Fiona. It was oh well, I'm sorry. Look, let me get back to China for a second. I wanted to ask you guys about this idea that if this is a lab, creation and escaped or however got out, is the president of China part of the cover up? Is he? What does the government of China? Because this is a very touchy political question, because it actually is a question centered around some people's desire to stir up some type of a war with China. So, do you guys have an opinion of whether or not the president of China or is either helping to cover up, or is he kind of frozen, waiting to see what happens? He's a key player, and he doesn't say much. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, I mean, we have to start with the what we know, which is this rat G13 variation that supposedly only killed bats for some reason, was brought to the Wuhan lab and made so that you could infect humans with it. This deadly virus, right? And it was 96% the similar virus, which is very high. SARS to SARS-2 is only 80%. MERS to SARS-2 is only 50%. So 96% plus a really crucial 511 amino acid string that was the same, except for a cleavage site, which would turn it into a bioweapon, right? So you have to go back to the characters that were involved in that transaction. And remember, this cleavage site in this 511 amino acid chain never ever appeared before in coronaviruses in the history of coronaviruses. So who was involved in that transaction? And there was Peter Daszak was involved with EcoHealth Alliance. The Erasmus lab was involved, and then this Zengli, this bat lady. So to me, that says all those parties are involved. I really don't count Peter Daszak as an American. He's a Brit, and the Royal Dutch Shell lab there in Erasmus, I don't count that as anything but, our NATO money going for Royal Dutch Shell's expeditionary force. And then the third is the government of China. So I look at China as a partner in development. You basically use all the NATO money you can. Klaus Schwab and Kissinger use all the NATO money you can to develop the bioweapon. Use it in Iraq. Use it in Libya, Syria, Sudan, Yemen. Use it to your heart's content. But when you need to try to then go from a bioweapon, which is very lethal, to something that will make you money, which is a mild bioweapon, a bioagent, which we can sell vaccines and booster shots forever.
The things you love with great deals.
And they do love the vaccines. Then you have to do some work, and you have to do testing. And that's where the Chinese come in. They have prisoners. Their prison population is greater than some American cities' population. And out there in those Western provinces, nobody's going to ever know. If 100 million disappeared tomorrow in China, same with India. I mean, they're not going to miss them. And those are numbers that you pray for in the drug development game. And that's what I think is really going on here. Because all the people on the inside of this say that they've been working together 6 and 7 years. Well, if Peter Daszak, is clinking glasses with Zengli for 6 or 7 years, I think that the president of China is involved in a cover-up of that. That's the part that they didn't want to get out. But now that's the part, like Dr. Hamamoto says, is coming apart, is unraveling. Melinda is now realizing that George Webb was correct in 2007. Said Bill Gates had a house in Haiti and was going every month to meet Jeff Epstein to go over the data in Haiti. Now these pictures are coming out of Jeff Epstein with Bill Gates in Haiti. This has been a program, not just this year, not just in 2019, but going back at least to 2011. So that's what I think is unraveling. So I don't ever like to look at the splashdown of the Saturn V and say, what was the arc of the Saturn V? I like saying, okay, well, tell me where it lifted off, and then tell me about the first stage, second stage, and third stage, and then I'll tell you what I think it is. And I think what we're seeing now is people are trying to analyze the splashdown, when in fact they should be going back to October 19th, 2019, when they pressed the button to launch this thing.
This is what Thomas Pynchon referred to as gravity's rainbow. We have to look at the gravity's rainbow. The trajectory is the tell right there. So far as culpability is concerned, I don't know if we can hold the president of China to any sort of accountability any more than Harry Truman could be held accountable for Hiroshima, Nagasaki, or any of these other, by many accounts, would be considered war crimes. I think our immediate concern is to what extent will these individuals, what extreme measures would they take in order to efface any trail or any incriminating evidence that their hands were there for the past 6-7 years? That's what we have to fear most at this point. And this is where, ironically, President Joe Biden can make a big difference before he's moved aside. If he wants to take his place in history just for that one singular gesture on his part, which is more than a gesture, it's really a move towards human survival, I think he's going to command respect and our eternal gratitude for years and years to come. So President Joe Biden, I implore you, do the right thing.
Yes, please, President Joe Biden, do the right thing while you can. But we have to keep on going anyway, and I think we are. Gosh, George, how many books have you got out now?
I'm on just about 25. Well, I tell you, John, here's what happens is somebody will come along, Andrea Shea King, and she says, hey, I just happened to collect 500 pages of notes based on 2,000 pages of my handwritten notes, and I typed up 500 pages. Would you publish it? And so I say, well, let me look at your notes. And I looked at the first 50 pages. I said, how about I take 50 pages and I'll annotate it with all the slides, and then I'll put in all the extra, connective tissue. And it made a book, which I released today. It's called Deep State Playbook. And it's a really pretty book. It's got a lot of, deep state players in it. It's really got a lot of the old stuff. Oops, sorry. I just lost my camera. Sorry, folks. Just lost my camera. But it's an 81-page book for for $2. And what I love about that is somebody can ask me to do a book, and it in about 10 hours, 12 hours, I can get it out. It's not War and Peace. It's a common sense pamphlet with 50 or to 75 illustrations, probably an illustration per page. But there's a lot of people who watched all those episodes that Andrea is talking about in those first 50 days that really want it.
Yeah.
And I sold a lot of those books today. I couldn't believe it. Like, a lot of people bought the Deep State Playbook, and the same thing with all the other books. So even if I only sell 50 books, I feel like there was someone out there who wanted that. And I'm trying to respond to that. I've been lucky. I've actually had them all go into the hundreds, and thousands, some of them. So that's how I look at it, is put it out there and then see what happens. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
George, I'm glad to see that. I'm very happy to see it, because what that does is it brings back to life all of the stories you gave us in your first couple of years, and there's a lot of them. I mean, I miss being able to look at your DynCorp work and your original series on Haiti, not to mention all of the Eric Braverman stuff, and the DNC and the blues and all the different. I mean, hundreds of subjects, and you covered them very thoroughly at the time. And when you lost your YouTube channel, we lost access to all that information. Well, I really am glad to see you doing this. And for the record, I didn't see your first 50 shows either. I came in at 63, which was kind of early, but not at the very beginning like Andrea Shea King did. So, and bravo, and thank you, Andrea, for putting this together. I'm looking forward to getting my copy, and I'm sure Professor Hamamoto is too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. I'd like to second that. Andrea Shea King, you're a true patriot for going through such great lengths to memorialize this great work that George did from the very, very beginning. I will just put in my plea for people who like books. I'd like to see a paper version of it so that I can buy. I'll still get the Kindle, but I like the books too.
Yeah, I put it out in paperback. I'm waiting for approval. It usually
okay, good.
72 hours, but I look at it and say, if I always shudder a little bit because of the price I have to pay for the book. I only make $1.50 on the paperback. I make about 35-40 cents on the Kindle. So I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to take advantage of them. But then the people say that, hey, they're small. I can take them on the plane. I can finish it, and then I can give it to somebody else, and then they can take it on the plane or whatever, while waiting for the kids to come back from a swim or whatever. And so I'm going to just keep writing. And this one, I only got to day 50. There's 500 pages. I only got to the first 7 pages.
This is great. This is exciting, George. I can't wait to get into the next chapter.
Yeah, but I cover Haiti. I did a little bit of Haiti, but Libya, Syria, Fast and Furious, Mark Turi, all those guys. And yeah, we got into Aleppo and Ava Bartlett and all these things that I had kind of forgotten about. Shifa Gardi, the journalist that was killed, Serena Shim, the journalist was killed covering these dark weapons that were used in Syria. The pipelines, Frank Juster partners, all these things where I'd kind of forgotten about are coming back now with all of her great notes.
So, George, you're also annotating the original text. So this is all material that you learned subsequent to your original reports?
Yeah, it's
How
about
does that work?
50. It's 50% her notes. She had all these copies. She had books and books of handwritten notes, and then she typed it up with more like cliff notes. And so it's about 50% her notes and 50% my annotations, because I update people of what happened now, since then. Like if there's new evidence that came about. For instance, I had said that she wanted to know about Molly McCauley. This is in my next book now that I sold a lot today. I was like, okay, well, people want to see this. The two guys that were killed in South Carolina in Myrtle Beach that I thought had killed Molly McCauley. And, they died 2 days later in sort of a kill the killer type thing. I had forgotten the guy's name. And so I have to go back and do a lot of research, but I want people to remember that's what I said, because if it does come out that those two Hispanic guys killed Molly McCauley, and that's who people who witnessed the killing said it was two Hispanic guys, both were at the DNC. Seth Rich was killed a day later. So it's just these intrigues that kind of like cold cases that never got solved. But I want people to know what I think about it, even though I don't have all the proof.
Mhm. And cold cases can be solved. There's a case in Newport Beach. This healthcare entrepreneur was murdered in 1994, and it wasn't until about 11 years later that his killers were finally brought to justice. And both of them are doing life in prison right now. So it can happen. And you know where it comes from? Reportage and investigation. That's where it starts and ends, really.
Yeah, we're meeting with a couple of people that know the Black Dahlia situation. I know you're working the Black Dahlia.
Oh, okay.
Black Dahlia is connected to Zodiac. Zodiac is connected to the Chicago killings, the lipstick murders. So this idea of, isn't it funny that in Waco, Texas, for instance, where we have the big cleanup on aisle 7, isn't it funny that was the alternative landing zone for the Clintons if Mena, Arkansas was under cloud cover?
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have known that unless I had talked to somebody who was a friend of Bob Mayhew, and Bob Mayhew loved to land there with the CIA. And those are the kind of things where you go, I wonder if that's why there was all those automatic weapons being stored in Waco. And it just gives you a totally different perspective of what really was going on.
Yeah, and for my money and for my research, it's the true crime genre that really gives you, if you don't have any, let's say, personal connection or contact or inside work, this is a good, like the Black Dahlia murders. This is a good entry point for the Citizen Journal, but you have to come in it with a mindset that there's more to the story, and that's where your work and your findings and your concepts and mine and John's come into play. You just can't read it blindly. You have to have a theoretical, you have to have a working set of hypotheses for this to make sense. And this is also, the true crime is the only place where we get to have a really deep understanding and insight into these servitors, that, as I call them, through the crime lens. Otherwise, they go completely under the radar. That's why I finally figured out why I'm so fascinated with true crime, including Black Dahlia. It's not just the cases, sensational as they are, but it is the insight it gives us to the so-called deep state. So there you go.
Well, go ahead, John. Sorry.
I'll add some insight that I just got from the Tim Weiner book, Enemies. And this is a story about J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover learned through an FBI agent that he had inserted into the embassy in the Dominican Republic, that Trujillo, the dictator of the Dominican Republic, was running just a complete dictatorship, like a Caesar, like a Nero, even with sex parties and drugs and the whole thing. I mean, and it was all about seduction of U.S. Government officials, and particularly congressmen. And one of the ones that Hoover had tons of evidence on was Senator James Eastland. And Senator Eastland was from Mississippi, and he was, a hardcore racist Klan type. And he was also one of Trujillo's most frequent visitors. And this sounds so much like the Jeff Epstein stuff of today, only instead of in Haiti, it's in the Dominican Republic. But here's the thing that I wanted to convey to you guys, and to keep this in mind, is that when Bobby Kennedy became the Attorney General, and he found out from Hoover about this Trujillo and all of these congressmen and everything, and there was quite a few of them, apparently, not just Eastland, but a number of them, that Bobby Kennedy said, well, I want the names. I want the heads to roll. I'm not going to put up with this. These people are corrupt, and our government can't do this, and we're going to nail these guys. And so Hoover goes and starts making dossiers on all these people. And but when it came right down to it, Senator Eastland, as the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and just because of his entrenched power in the Senate over, his entire career, was regarded as one of the most powerful men in the country. And that if you went against any of these other congressmen, that would lead directly to him. And so they just couldn't take the risk, because they needed Senator Eastland to support Hoover, because Senator Eastland was one of Hoover's most reliable supports in the Senate. So you see, this sex stuff, the sex and drugs, and we're above the law, and we can go to the Dominican Republic. Who's the guy from New Jersey, Menendez, that always goes down there? I mean, we're above the law. We don't care what you guys think. We've got 10 ways from Sunday to get out of any kind of trouble you can get us in. And, maybe they'll fake my death, but I don't care. I'm still going to be living, high on the hog, and with the girls and the parties and the booze. These people really were in that lifestyle, and I don't think there's any evidence it ever stopped. So we have to consider that also. The another elephant in the room is that this business of people just allowing themselves to be brought into this world, and then you're stuck. You can't avoid it. And when Trujillo says, here's $25,000, I'd like to have my nephew here admitted into Harvard, you make sure it happens.
Yeah, and I think of Henry Kissinger down there in Punta Cana in Dominican Republic with Hillary Clinton. And she would always make the big trip to Punta Cana for a week to listen to Henry Kissinger. So I'm sure there was some great, and Jeff Epstein is a great example, John, where it was just, they had everybody.
Well, that's the story then. I'm just nothing new under the sun, but really more broadly, I think Professor Hamamoto's focus on the sexual side of politics is very, very important. And to think about it as a male-female struggle, but at the same time, a male-female dependence, so that you're locked in both a struggle and an embrace of love at the same time. And that is part of the definition of humanity that we cannot let them take away.
Don't get me wrong, John. I listened to Dr. Hamamoto. I wrote a book about the Long Island serial killer, which could be very well not one killer, but a series of killers and Jeff Epstein may be one of them. And political intrigue, you see the witnesses. So this is the sort of thing where a cold case came into it, and we found these burlap bags from this one basmati rice. No one wanted to talk about that. There's a 911 call, a 25-minute where she is being chased by both the limo driver and the person who was at the house. All this stuff where if we could get just a couple of breaks, could actually solve the case. I hope with the stuff I put out about the Hells Angels and the bar where they were recruiting the girls and the limo company that they were using to take them out to Long Island. I mean, somebody might take that information and then put that together and solve the case. But I agree with Dr. Hamamoto. If you don't write the book and you don't put it out there, what you know, even if you're not sure of everything, then you don't solve the case.
True.
Okay.
John, I just for my final words for today, I know you're really busy right now, but what you just summarized with this eternal tension and complementarity between the male and female and how dark it is, I'd like to see you write one of those great old-fashioned American murder ballads using that very theme, the way you put it in there. Go back in the tapes and look at that. That's a song right there, John.
All right. Well, we'll have to sing that song another time. It's
Yes, another time.
9:03, so we've gone a little bit over, and I appreciate you guys sticking around so we could wrap up another topic there. A great show for me. I think everybody would agree with me tonight. It's been really a special night. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, John. Thank you, George.